The stars glittered like 1,000 frozen fires across the void of space, silent and indifferent. Princess Lyra of Tiravani leaned against the observation deck of the Starlight Grace, her silver uniform crisp against the cold, polished floor. She had always loved the view, endless black punctuated with bursts of light. But tonight, her thoughts were far from the distant stars. She tapped the datapad in her hands, scanning through the centuries-old stories she had been assigned to lecture about. Ancient texts, mostly myths, spoke of a species called humans. They were said to be reckless, fearless, and absurdly bold, warriors who faced dangers no other species could survive. Lyra raised an eyebrow and scoffed quietly. "Fairy tales," she muttered, her voice soft though her assistant could hear. Behind her, the assistant, a small lavender-skinned alien named Tyran, chuckled. "You are quite sure, Princess?" he asked, adjusting the lenses on his ocular implant. Many species claim humans were real. Some even say they shaped the galaxy in ways no one else could. Lyra shook her head, letting her long hair float slightly in the zero-gravity environment. "Legends are for children, Tyran. Stories to scare or amuse. No species could survive wars without enormous fleets, armies, or advanced AI. Humans vanished long ago. That's why no one sees them. They were clever, yes, but not magical." Tyran tilted his head, a faint purple glow emanating from his crown-like head ridge. "Magic is not necessary, Princess. But survival beyond reason, that is remarkable. Some call it skill. Others call it luck. Humans may have had both," Lyra smirked. "Or none at all. Perhaps it was just exaggeration, meant to inspire young soldiers to imagine heroes that never existed." She tapped her datapad, and holographic images of humans appeared above it. Tall, diverse, a few in military uniforms, some in strange suits with strange weapons. See, they are human, fragile, temporary, easily forgotten. Her lecture hall had been filled with similar arguments before. As a scholar and officer of the Galactic Exploration Fleet, Lyra prided herself on rationality. Her duty was to separate fact from fiction, legend from truth, and in her eyes the human legends were nothing more than fantasy. Her mentor, Admiral Varen, had always warned her about overconfidence. He entered quietly, his presence calm yet commanding. His gray-blue eyes scanned the deck. "Careful, Lyra," he said. "Some legends wait to be rediscovered. Mock them at your peril." Lyra rolled her eyes. "I have never been afraid of stories, Admiral. Facts are what matter." He smiled faintly. "Facts are often hiding behind what we call stories. Remember that." She ignored him, turning back to the datapad. The lecture would begin soon. Young cadets from across the Union would arrive to hear her debunk myths about humans. She imagined their wide eyes, hanging on every word of her rational explanations. They would leave knowing humans were nothing more than fairy tales. That was, after all, what history professors were for. The comm panel beeped suddenly, interrupting her thoughts. Lyra frowned and approached it. "Princess, incoming transmission," Tyran said. Unmarked. Very old signal, repeating on several frequencies. Lyra's brow furrowed. "Old? How old?" "Difficult to say. Could be centuries," Tyran replied, his voice cautious. Lyra tapped the controls. The screen flickered to life, displaying strange symbols she barely recognized. It was a distress signal, ancient and encrypted, coming from a star system outside known space. A name blinked briefly before fading. Sol 3. Her pulse quickened. She had read about Sol 3 in the archives. Ancient texts claimed it was the home of the humans, the very species she had dismissed as fantasy. But that planet had vanished from all star maps centuries ago. To anyone else, it was just a myth. "Sol 3? She whispered, her fingers brushing the controls. "That's impossible." Tyran tilted his head. "Unless it is not a myth. Perhaps the planet still exists." Lyra felt a spark of something she rarely experienced. Curiosity. Pure, burning curiosity. Her rational mind argued against it. Myths didn't send signals. And yet here it was. A clear, repeating distress call from a system long considered empty. "Prepare the ship," she said suddenly, her voice firm. "We're going to see if fairy tales can speak." Tyran blinked, startled. "Princess, are you serious?" "I have never been more serious in my life," Lyra replied, her eyes shining. "Chart a course to Sol 3, maximum speed. Let's find out if humans were just stories or something more." The crew moved quickly, their usual calm shaken by the urgency in her voice. The Starlight Grace was one of the fastest ships in the fleet, designed for exploration and deep space missions. Lyra stood on the bridge watching as stars stretched into lines around them, faster than anything she had ever commanded. As they approached Sol 3, her heart raced. The planetary scans revealed a planet still blue and green, covered with strange forests and water bodies, though much had changed. Cities lay in ruins, overgrown with alien vegetation, yet remnants of advanced structures still remained. Lyra's skepticism wavered. She had imagined empty deserts, desolate wastelands, but not this. The planet hummed with energy, faint but undeniable, and the distress signal pulsed steadily, guiding them toward something buried beneath the surface. They descended slowly, sensors picking up strange anomalies, machines long inactive, structures that seemed almost alive, responding to their presence. Lyra's mind raced. Are these human constructs? She asked aloud, unable to hide her wonder. Tyrion's eyes glowed faintly. Possibly. They are unlike anything else recorded in the galaxy. Lyra frowned. If humans existed and their technology survived, then we are standing in the remains of legends. The landing site was a ruined city, partially collapsed, partially reclaimed by nature. Towers of metal and glass reached skyward, like the skeletons of giants. Lyra led her team carefully, scanning for signs of life. Princess, Tyrion said softly, there is a reading, life form. Very faint, but it is there. Lyra froze. A human? She whispered, barely daring to hope. Impossible. They vanished centuries ago. Still, the sensors insisted. A single life sign, alive and waiting. Deep below the ruins, hidden beneath layers of stone and metal, a chamber emitted a faint glow. Lyra's pulse quickened as they approached the massive door. Strange symbols adorned it. Ancient writing, unmistakably human in style. Open it, she commanded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline. The door hissed and slid aside slowly, revealing a chamber untouched by time. In the center lay a stasis pod humming softly. A figure inside, tall, human, clad in an old Earth uniform, remained perfectly still. The sight struck her silent. Every story she had dismissed, every mockery she had spoken, vanished in an instant. Tyrion whispered almost reverently, Princess, it is real. He is real. Lyra swallowed hard, her eyes locked on the pod. The human inside, the last human, waiting for them to awaken him. The stasis pod hissed and released a soft cloud of vapor. Lyra's hand hovered over the control panel, trembling slightly despite her usual composure. The human inside blinked once, then again, his eyes a striking shade of blue that seemed almost alive with ancient fire. He was tall, strong-looking, and undeniably human. For centuries no one had seen a real human, and now, here he was, waking before her. Who woke me? His voice was calm but firm, resonant with authority. And where are my people? Lyra froze for a heartbeat. The words carried a weight she had not expected. Humans were supposed to be myths, stories for cadets to giggle about. Yet this being, this living, breathing human, spoke as if he belonged to another time entirely. You're human, she said, barely above a whisper. It's impossible. We thought humans vanished centuries ago. The human studied her carefully, his gaze piercing yet calm. I was in stasis. My fleet fell. My planet gone. Time has moved on without us. I am alone, it seems. His words were soft, tinged with sorrow, but he spoke without panic. Lyra felt a strange mix of awe and guilt. All those lectures she had given mocking humans, calling them fairy tales, she had been wrong. And now she stood face to face with the last living proof of their legends. I am Princess Lyra of Tiravani, she said, stepping forward. And this is my crew. We didn't know you existed. We found your planet, or what is left of it, because it sent a distress signal. You are the first human we have ever seen. The human nodded slowly. Lyra, a beautiful name. He paused, taking in his surroundings. And your crew? I sense no hostility. That is good. Hostility would not have helped either of us. Tyrion, still hovering at a respectful distance, whispered, Princess, he is different. His presence. It feels commanding. Natural authority, Lyra nodded. She had noticed it too. Humans were supposed to be fragile, short-lived, ordinary. But this one, Adrian, as he would later introduce himself, carried something else. A sense of purpose. a calm certainty that she could not ignore. They guided Adrian from the pod to a medical station aboard the Starlight Grace. His movements were careful, deliberate, each step measured, though it was clear he was physically strong. He examined the station's instruments with interest, touching panels and controls with a fluidity no other species possessed. Lights flickered in response, and dormant systems seemed to awaken as if recognizing him. Lyra blinked. How are you doing that? Adrian smiled faintly. Humans designed things to respond to their presence. Not magic, not luck, symbiosis. Machines were meant to obey their makers, to trust them, that is, why some of your sensors blinked and activated when I approached. Tyrion's jaw dropped slightly. This key is extraordinary. None of the AI in the fleet responds to biological signals in this way. Adrian's expression was calm. Humans thought ahead. We built things to last even if we could not, that is, our gift and our burden. Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine. Everything she had been taught about humans, about their fragility, their disappearance, was being rewritten before her eyes. The legends had not exaggerated. They had understated. Over the next hours, Adrian learned to communicate with the crew. Language was a challenge. His accent was ancient, his phrasing formal and deliberate, but Tyrion's translator software adapted quickly. Slowly, stories emerged. Fragments of humanity's last days, recorded memories, and echoes of the civilization they had left behind. They were united once, Adrian said quietly, his eyes distant. All of us together. Earth was strong, but the galaxy turned against us. Our fleets fought bravely, but in the end, we vanished. Not from cowardice, but because we chose to survive in a way others could not understand. Lyra listened, stunned. She had always assumed myths of human courage were embellishments, but hearing it from a human, from him, changed everything. You speak of heroism, she said, hesitating. You mean, you faced impossible odds and survived? Adrian shook his head. We did not survive, not as a species. But we left behind knowledge, machines, ideas, seeds for the future. Humans are not here, but our legacy can be found. Lyra realized that his calmness, his strength, and his quiet sorrow were all part of what made humans remarkable. It was not the size of their fleets or the power of their weapons. It was their will to endure, their ingenuity and their hope. Adrian led them to a part of the ruined city, where massive machines lay dormant. Rusted war engines, orbital cannons, and towering suits of armor waited silently beneath layers of stone. Yet as he approached, lights flickered, panels lit up, and systems hummed to life. This technology, Lyra whispered. It's centuries old. How can it still work? Adrian glanced at her. Because it was built to last. Humans do not rely on luck. We leave instructions, safeguards, and faith that someone someday will know how to use it. Perhaps that someone is you. Lyra stared at him, realizing the truth. Humans had vanished, but they had prepared. They had made themselves part of the galaxy, not through force, but through ingenuity and foresight. Tyrion shook his head in awe. The stories. All of them. They are not exaggeration, they are understatement, Adrian nodded. Legends are strange things. They often survive the truth, then grow taller in the telling. I suppose. That is why you thought us a fairy tale. Lyra felt a pang of shame. She had mocked humans publicly, dismissed their stories as childish fantasies. Now she stood before one, and the reality was more incredible than anything she could have imagined. As they explored further, they discovered holographic records of humanity's last fleet. Adrian explained each vessel, each mission, each decision. Lyra and her crew were fascinated by the discipline, courage, and ingenuity displayed in the recordings. They saw humans piloting ships with precision no AI could match, making split-second choices that saved lives or prevented disaster. Then came the most astonishing revelation. Adrian demonstrated manual piloting of one of the smaller human craft still docked in the ruins. The ship's systems hummed in response to his presence, lights tracking his hand movements. He navigated through debris, dodging malfunctioning defense drones, performing maneuvers the crew thought impossible. Lyra watched, wide-eyed. This is beyond anything we have ever seen. How can one human do this? Adrian smiled faintly. We adapted. We learned. We endured. One human cannot do everything, but a human can inspire many to achieve what seems impossible. That is the strength of our species. Her heart pounded with admiration and disbelief. The fairy tales she had ridiculed, they were true. Humans were not gods nor monsters. They were extraordinary in their persistence, intelligence, and courage. By nightfall, the crew returned to the Starlight Grace, carrying samples, records, and fragments of human technology. Adrian stood on the observation deck with Lyra, gazing at the ruined planet below. "You have seen only a fraction," he said softly. "The rest of humanity's work remains hidden. I only hope it survives long enough for others to understand it." Lyra swallowed, her voice trembling slightly. I will see that it does. You've given us a gift beyond imagining. Not just technology, but hope, faith, courage. Something no one else in the galaxy can match." Adrian looked at her, a faint smile on his face. "Do not thank me yet, Princess. Humanity's story is not finished. The galaxy we left behind was not kind to miracles. You may find others are waiting to test them." Lyra's pulse quickened. "Test them?" she asked. "What do you mean?" Adrian did not answer immediately. He turned to the viewport, staring at the stars. "You will see soon enough. For now, learn, observe, and remember that humans were real. That is enough for today." Lyra nodded, though she could not tear her eyes away from him. She felt a mixture of fear and excitement. The galaxy was far larger and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. And here, standing before her, was proof that one human could change everything. The Starlight Grace prepared to leave orbit. Sensors detected faint signals, small but deliberate, coming from deep within alien space. Signals of the same strange design as the one that woke Adrian. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. "Princess," Tyrion said, voice hushed, "someone, or something, is out there, following these signals. And I think it is not friendly." Adrian straightened, his expression calm yet resolute. "Then we will be ready. Humans never faced challenges they could not overcome, and we will not start now." Lyra realized in that moment that the stories were only beginning. The legends had awakened, and humanity, though thought lost, still had a voice in the galaxy. She looked at Adrian, at the last human, and finally understood. The fairy tales had been true, and now she was standing at the beginning of a story no one had seen in 1,000 years. The Starlight Grace glided silently through the void, leaving the ruins of Sol 3 behind. Stars streaked past in long, glittering trails, and the crew moved with the quiet efficiency that only experienced explorers possessed. Yet none could shake the sense that something ancient and powerful was watching them. Lyra stood on the bridge, her hands resting on the rail, eyes glued to the holographic display. "The signals are growing stronger," she said. "They're not random. Someone or something is signaling to us." Tyrion tilted his head, his bioluminescent crest flickering nervously. "The patterns are unusual. Nothing in the Galactic Union matches these frequencies." Adrian, standing near the observation deck, studied the readings with a calm intensity that made the crew uneasy. His centuries-old human instincts analyzed the data in a way no AI or alien sensor could. "Unusual does not mean impossible," he said quietly, almost to himself. "But someone or something wants to test us." Lyra glanced at him. "Test us, you mean a threat?" Adrian nodded. "The galaxy has always been a place of challenges. Humans were never protected by luck. We survived because we understood danger and acted before it could act on us." Lyra felt a thrill of both fear and admiration. She had been taught that humans were fragile, short-lived, and incapable of standing against the galaxy's giants. Yet here was Adrian, calm, collected, and exuding a presence that seemed to command both respect and caution. As the Starlight Grace approached the next system, the ship's sensors suddenly flared. Streams of energy lit the displays, ancient alien defense arrays dormant for centuries now powering up as though recognizing intruders. Shields at full power. Lyra barked, trying to keep control. What are these?" Adrian stepped forward, his movements deliberate. He did not panic. Instead, he walked to the central console and ran his hands over the controls, almost as if the machine could feel his presence. "They are old," he said. "Not destroyed. They were left as warnings, or traps, but they respond to signals, not just attacks. Observe." Lyra and the crew watched in tense silence. Adrian touched a panel, muttering calculations under his breath. Lights blinked across the arrays, and slowly the energy readings shifted. One by one, the defense systems deactivated, or aligned in a new pattern. Lyra could hardly believe her eyes. How did you do that? Adrian glanced at her, a faint smile playing across his face. Humans anticipate. We design systems to respond intelligently to logic and presence. Sometimes all it takes is understanding the rules they were built to follow. The crew exchanged amazed glances. The legends of human ingenuity were no exaggeration. One man had just turned ancient alien technology from a threat into a tool they could navigate safely through. Once the arrays were neutralized, Adrian explained more about human strategies. Humans think in layers, he said, tapping a holographic map. Not just one solution, but many. We prepare for failure, we prepare for surprise, and we adapt instantly. That is how we survived when survival seemed impossible. Lyra listened, fascinated. The more she learned, the more the fairy tales she had once mocked began to make sense. Humans had not relied on sheer numbers or strength. They had relied on their minds, their courage, and their ability to turn obstacles into opportunities. Tyrion, still glowing faintly from nervous excitement, whispered, "Princess, I think we have underestimated humans. By centuries." Lyra nodded silently, her eyes never leaving Adrian. She felt a profound respect growing inside her, mingled with guilt. She had dismissed an entire species as myth. Now she stood before the last living proof that humans had been extraordinary beyond measure. The ship's sensors suddenly detected a faint distress signal emanating from the planet below. Not human in origin, alien but unmistakably intelligent. Another challenge, Adrian murmured. Humans never waited for problems to find them. We sought them out and solved them. Lyra hesitated. You want us to investigate? This could be dangerous. Adrian's gaze was steady. Every discovery carries risk. But humans, we do not shy away from what must be faced. She took a deep breath and nodded. Prepare the shuttle. We'll go down. The shuttle descended through the alien atmosphere, piercing clouds that glowed faintly with strange energy. The source of the signal came into view. A city-like complex built from strange metals and crystals, still partially intact despite centuries of neglect. As they landed, Lyra felt a mixture of fear and awe. This was not just any planet. It was a place designed for defense but also for survival. Machines hummed faintly, sensing the crew's presence. And then, as they approached the main building, the doors opened automatically. Adrian stepped forward first. The lights inside flickered to life, illuminating corridors and chambers long abandoned. Lyra could feel the power of the place, human ingenuity made tangible, still active after centuries. Inside they found alien devices, some for research, others for defense, still operational. Adrian walked calmly through them, examining each carefully, explaining their functions to the crew. These systems are old, he said, but built to last. Humans thought ahead. We leave marks on the universe even if we cannot be there to see the result. Lyra realized he was right. Everything he touched seemed to awaken. A simple gesture, a thought, and dormant machines responded. Humans had left pieces of themselves across the galaxy, not just physically but intellectually. Tyrion shook his head. It's like they are still alive. In a way, Adrian smiled faintly. In a sense, we are. Humans leave legacies. That is why we are remembered. That is why you found me. Lyra felt a lump in her throat. She had always thought humans were fragile, easily forgotten. But Adrian and everything he represented proved that humans were eternal in spirit, if not in numbers. Suddenly, a holographic screen activated. A recorded message from a human fleet appeared. Hundreds of ships coordinated flawlessly, defending against impossible odds. The holographic humans moved with precision, their strategies brilliant and daring. Lyra watched, speechless. These stories, they were true, Adrian nodded. Truth is often stranger than legend. Humanity faced extinction and created miracles along the way. That is the essence of who we are. The crew felt a surge of admiration, and something else, hope. If humans could survive the impossible, even in legend, then perhaps the galaxy was not as hopeless as it sometimes seemed. As they returned to the shuttle, the planet's systems began to stir again. Strange energy pulses radiated outward, scanning the surrounding space. Adrian observed quietly. Someone else is watching, he said. Not with hostility, but with curiosity. Humans have always attracted attention, Sometimes admiration, sometimes fear. You will see both. Lyra's pulse quickened. Admiral, do you think the rest of the galaxy will accept this? That humans are real? Adrian's gaze met hers. Acceptance is not the point. Humans do not live for approval. We act, we endure, and we leave a mark. That is enough. Lyra realized he was right. She had spent her life seeking proof, certainty, and respect from others. Adrian's calm, deliberate presence reminded her that some truths did not need permission. Some truths simply were. The shuttle returned to the Starlight Grace. Adrian quietly integrated himself into the ship's systems, showing them ways to repair the failing engines and shields. Machines that had confounded alien engineers for decades responded to his instructions, as if recognizing their creator's instincts. Lyra watched in awe. One human can do all of this? Adrian shook his head. Not all humans, but one human guided by experience and determination can inspire many to achieve what seems impossible. That is what makes us legendary. The crew shared a look of silent agreement. Humans were no fairy tales. They were real, extraordinary, unstoppable in spirit. Lyra felt a new determination growing inside her. The galaxy had been complacent, dismissive, and arrogant. It had forgotten humans, but she would carry the truth forward. She would make the galaxy see what humans had been and what they could still inspire. The Starlight Grace cruised through the void, leaving the ruins of Sol 3 behind. Yet Lyra could not shake the feeling that the galaxy had suddenly become much larger and much more dangerous. Long-range sensors blinked with activity, detecting faint signals that pulsated across space. They were unmistakably human in origin, yet coming from deep within territories dominated by alien civilizations known for their hostility toward outsiders. Adrian stood near the bridge console, his tall figure calm against the backdrop of streaming stars. "This signal," he said, his tone quiet but measured, "is a call from a human fleet. Long thought lost, waiting, or perhaps testing those who might be worthy." Lyra swallowed hard. She had spent hours marveling at Adrian's abilities, at the human's legacy of ingenuity and courage. But this was something entirely different. The signal meant that a part of humanity, hidden, dormant, yet still alive, was reaching out across the galaxy. And now they had been noticed. The bridge crew worked silently, tracing the signal. Its source was in a sector of space littered with dense asteroid fields and decaying orbital stations, a region marked on no current maps. "Princess," Tyrion said softly, "this path is dangerous. Many species avoid this sector. Some ships never return." Lyra met his gaze, her resolve hardening. "We have come this far, Tyrion. We cannot ignore it. If humans are alive, or even if their technology is, we must find them. We must see the truth." Adrian nodded approvingly. "Caution is wise, but fear would have doomed my kind centuries ago. Humans do not flee when facing the impossible. We advance." Lyra felt a thrill of admiration. She had always thought humans fragile, yet here was proof that one human, or even just the memory of their species, could inspire courage far beyond its size. As they approached the coordinates, the sensors revealed a breathtaking sight. Dozens of massive human ships, long thought destroyed or lost, drifted in orbit around a dying star. Their hulls glinted faintly under the star's light, ancient yet intact. Lyra's breath caught. They are real." Adrian's blue eyes softened as he surveyed the fleet. Yes, they were always meant to be found by those who could understand them. Not to conquer, not to fight, but to survive, and to inspire. The crew moved to their stations, overwhelmed by the enormity of what they saw. Each vessel was a testament to human engineering, perfectly maintained despite centuries of neglect, systems humming softly as if awaiting a human touch. Lyra approached Adrian. "How did they survive like this? No one has touched these ships in 1,000 years." He smiled faintly. "Humans think in ways others cannot. We leave instructions, safeguards, and signals to awaken our creations. Even if we are gone, our work waits. Our fleets wait, and some will awaken only when someone worthy arrives." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. These ships were not just machines, they were a message, a reminder, and a legacy all at once. The Starlight Grace approached cautiously. Adrian guided them through the fleet, explaining their functions and origins. Some ships were built for exploration, others for defense. One enormous vessel, larger than anything Lyra had seen, pulsed faintly as its systems activated at Adrian's presence. "This is the flagship," Adrian said softly. "HSS Resolute." "My command!" Lyra felt awe sweep over her. The stories she had dismissed, the fairy tales she had laughed at, everything she had been taught to believe about humans' fragility, was shattered. Here in orbit around a distant dying star, humans had left a part of themselves that endured against all odds. She turned to Adrian. "It's incredible. You're not just a legend, you're a living story." Adrian's expression was calm, almost somber. "Stories are never about one person, Princess. They are about courage, choices, and the legacy we leave behind. Humans were never alone. Our ships, our machines, our knowledge, they are extensions of us. That is why they remain." Lyra realized the truth in his words. Humanity's power had never been in weapons or numbers. It had been in determination, ingenuity, and hope, the kind that outlives even time itself. As they explored the fleet, strange phenomena began to occur. Lights flickered in response to Adrian's presence, systems activated without input, and dormant AI modules hummed softly. Machines that had baffled centuries of alien engineers awoke as if recognizing their creator. "This is beyond anything I imagined," Tyrion whispered, his voice barely audible. Adrian smiled faintly. "Humans are remembered not for the battles we won, but for the way we prepared for them. We create opportunities where others see obstacles. That is why our legacy endures." Lyra felt a surge of pride, not for herself but for a species she had never truly understood. Humans were real, extraordinary, and now she stood at the center of their rebirth. Suddenly, a new signal pulsed through the fleet's sensors. It was subtle, almost hidden, but unmistakably deliberate. Someone or something was reaching out. Adrian's expression sharpened. Another test, not of strength but of understanding. Humans have always sought worthy allies, or at least worthy witnesses. Lyra frowned. "Worthy witnesses? Are you saying they are alive?" Adrian shook his head. "Not alive. At least not in the way you understand. Humans knew some of our creations would outlast us. We placed them in waiting, leaving instructions for discovery. But these signals, someone or something is responding. The galaxy is watching our legacy." Lyra felt a thrill of anticipation. The galaxy she had once thought simple and rational had suddenly become much more complex, filled with ancient mysteries and hidden power. The Starlight Grace moved deeper into the fleet, guided by Adrian's knowledge. They explored ships built for exploration, communication, and even survival in hostile environments. Adrian demonstrated systems that humans had left as safeguards: energy shields, repair drones, and AI networks designed to maintain the ships indefinitely. Lyra marveled at the ingenuity. "They thought of everything," she said softly. Adrian nodded. "Humans do not leave things to chance. We prepare, we adapt, and we endure. Even if the galaxy forgets us, we ensure that our knowledge remains. That is how we survived, and how we will continue to inspire." The crew worked alongside Adrian, learning and repairing what they could. Every system that hummed to life, every machine that responded to human touch, strengthened their respect and awe. Tyrion whispered, "Princess, I think we are witnessing something greater than just human technology." "This is your genius," Lyra nodded, "and courage. Humans faced extinction and still prepared for a future they would never see. That is bravery beyond measure." Hours passed, and the crew became more comfortable in the fleet. Adrian guided them through the flagship, HSS Resolute, showing them archives of humanity's last missions. Holographic recordings displayed humans coordinating fleets, strategizing in impossible situations, and acting with courage no other species could replicate. Lyra watched, her heart pounding. The fairy tales she had once mocked were not only true, they were understated. Humans had not only survived the impossible, they had thrived in it, leaving a legacy that outlived their physical presence. Adrian turned to her. "Legends are not exaggerations. They are echoes of truth amplified by admiration. Humans created wonders and the galaxy forgot them. Now you see them firsthand." Lyra felt a swell of humility. She had mocked the stories, dismissed the species, and yet here she was, learning the truth from the last human, standing before a fleet that carried humanity's legacy like a heartbeat through time. As the day ended, The Starlight Grace settled into a quiet orbit around the fleet. Adrian stood at the observation deck, looking at the ships as if reading old friends. Lyra joined him, silent. "You were right," she said finally. Humans were real. And their courage. Their ingenuity, it is unmatched." Adrian smiled faintly. "Courage and ingenuity alone are not enough. Humans endured because we adapted, because we inspired each other, and because we never gave up. That is what makes us human." Lyra felt the weight of the truth settle over her. The galaxy was larger, stranger, and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. But humans had faced it all, and they had left behind a legacy that could still guide the living. The Starlight Grace hovered quietly in orbit around the human fleet. The dying star below bathed the ancient vessels in pale gold, and the crew of Lyra's ship felt an almost sacred stillness. Every hull, every dormant machine, every darkened bridge seemed to hum faintly, as though waiting for recognition, waiting for the one who could awaken them. Adrian stood at the forefront, his gaze sweeping across the fleet. His presence commanded quiet respect from the Trevany crew, even though they had long grown to admire him. Every ship, every system responded subtly to him, as if remembering their master after centuries of silence. "This is humanity's final legacy," Adrian said softly. "Not in numbers, not in firepower, but in purpose. Every ship, every system, every message was designed to endure, to inspire, even if humans themselves were gone." Lyra's eyes were wide. She had known humans were extraordinary, but this was beyond imagination. She felt a thrill of awe and humility. "It's perfect. You didn't just survive. You left the galaxy a gift." Adrian's lips curved faintly. "We do not act for praise. We act to endure, and to leave hope where none seems possible." The sensors aboard the Starlight Grace suddenly flickered. A massive energy pulse erupted from the flagship, HSS Resolute. Lights across the fleet blinked in unison. Dormant engines hummed to life. Defense systems realigned. Communication channels opened. Every ship, long silent for centuries, responded as though awakening from a long dream. Lyra felt her pulse quicken. "Adrian, what's happening?" He stepped forward calmly, placing his hands on the central console. "The fleet recognizes me. The systems are awakening fully. Humanity's message will be broadcast to the galaxy for the first time in 1,000 years. You are about to see why humans were never forgotten." The ships began to project a vast, holographic display into the void, a map of the galaxy as it had been centuries ago, overlaid with human fleet positions, colonies, and messages. Bright points of light marked locations where humans had left behind knowledge, technology, and warnings for the future. Lyra gasped. "It's incredible. The scale, the planning, all this time, humans were preparing for this moment?" Adrian nodded. Humanity always planned for tomorrow, even when yesterday was lost. Every creation, every fleet, every signal, it was meant to guide, inspire, and endure. And now, it reaches you. The crew watched in awe as a holographic message activated, floating between the stars. Adrian's voice spoke alongside it, calm, steady, and full of gravity. "To all who find this message, humanity was once a people of hope, courage, and endurance. We faced extinction and the collapse of our home world, yet we persevered. We leave this fleet, our knowledge, and our legacy not for conquest but for inspiration. If you hear this, remember, the impossible can be achieved when courage, ingenuity, and hope guide your actions." Lyra felt tears prick her eyes. She had studied humans as myths, laughed at the idea of their legendary courage, and now she was hearing their words, their philosophy, and their final testament. Tyron's voice trembled softly. "Princess, and they were real. And everything they left, it's alive. It's still teaching us." Adrian glanced at her. "Legends survive because they were true. Humans do not need to be present to inspire. Our creations, our courage, and our actions endure. That is why you found me, and why you will carry this forward." The fleet stirred further. Systems designed for defense and exploration aligned, scanning the surrounding stars. Ships long, inactive began to communicate with one another, forming an orderly network. Their lights blinked in patterns so precise and complex that Lyra could barely comprehend them. "You've activated a fleet that has slept for centuries," she whispered. What happens next?" Adrian looked out at the ships, his eyes reflecting their glow. "Now the galaxy will remember. Humanity may be gone, but our work is not. Those who seek knowledge, hope, and courage can find it here. And those who doubt, they will witness the truth. Humans were never weak, never fragile. We endure in ways others cannot yet understand." Lyra felt a rush of pride, not for herself but for a species she had once dismissed. She had mocked fairy tales, and now she stood at the center of one, the last human, a fleet awakening, and a legacy that could inspire the entire galaxy. The crew began to study the fleet in earnest. Adrian guided them through ships containing archives of human knowledge, navigation systems capable of reaching unexplored sectors, and experimental technology designed to endure even the harshest conditions. "This is beyond our understanding," Tyrion admitted. "Even our most advanced scientists could not have imagined this." Adrian smiled faintly. Humanity was not the strongest in the galaxy, not the fastest, not the largest. But we were clever, courageous, and persistent. We built not for war but for endurance. That is why these ships survived and why you are witnessing this now. Lyra looked at him, a thought striking her suddenly. All this time, humans prepared, not just for survival but to inspire others. You were thinking centuries ahead, leaving this for anyone who could appreciate it. Adrian nodded. Yes. Legacy is not about being remembered. It is about ensuring that courage, knowledge, and hope survive, even if we do not. That is the heart of humanity. Hours passed and the crew worked alongside Adrian, learning to navigate and operate some of the fleet's ships. Each demonstration revealed new depths of human ingenuity. Systems that had puzzled alien engineers for centuries activated with his touch. Navigation algorithms adjusted instinctively. Repair drones repaired themselves, guided only by his presence. Lyra was astounded. One human can make this entire fleet function? Adrian shook his head. Not just one human, but one human, with knowledge, experience, and determination, can awaken centuries of effort. Humans always work together, even across generations. This fleet is humanity's voice, Tyrion added softly. It's as if the fleet is alive, waiting for someone like him. Adrian's eyes softened. Machines may be metal and code, but they are extensions of our mind, our will, and our hope. That is why humans endure even when unseen. As night fell over the dying star, Lyra realized the truth. Humans had never been just a species. They were a force of ideas, of resilience, of spirit. Legends survived because humans had made them real. And now she carried that lesson in her heart. You've changed everything, she whispered. The galaxy will never look at humans the same way again. Adrian's gaze was steady. Humans were never forgotten. They were only waiting for someone to see them clearly. That is why you are here, Princess. You will carry our story forward, as witness and as messenger. Lyra felt a weight settle on her shoulders, not a burden, but a responsibility. To carry the truth, to honor the courage and ingenuity of a species that had vanished physically but endured spiritually. The energy pulse from HSS Resolute surged again, and the holographic message expanded, projecting across the galaxy. Ships far and wide would see the light, and those who were capable of understanding would hear humanity's voice. Adrian turned to Lyra. The fairy tales were true, but more importantly, humans were real, and they remain wherever courage and hope endure. Lyra stepped forward, placing her hand on the console. She felt the pulse of the fleet, the heartbeat of a civilization long gone yet alive in spirit. I promise, she whispered. I will make the galaxy see it. I will honor your legacy. Adrian nodded. That is all we ask. And know this, Princess. Humans do not vanish. We endure in those who recognize courage, in those who carry hope. You are now part of our story." Lyra felt a surge of warmth and pride. She had mocked fairy tales, dismissed legends, and scoffed at myths. But standing before the last human and the awakened fleet, she understood. Humans were not fragile. Humans were not gone. Humans were eternal in spirit. And she had witnessed it. The Starlight Grace prepared to leave orbit, carrying Adrian and the knowledge of the human fleet. As they departed, the fleet continued to awaken fully, lights blinking, engines humming, and systems synchronizing in perfect harmony. Humanity's message would spread across the stars, inspiring hope in ways no one could yet measure. Lyra looked at Adrian one last time before the jump to faster-than-light speed. "Thank you," she said softly, "for showing us, for being real." Adrian's blue eyes met hers. "No, Princess, thank you for believing, for seeing the truth. Remember, the galaxy needs courage, ingenuity, and hope more than it needs anything else. Humans only remind others of what is possible."